The metal tray hit the stainless steel counter with a sharp clang that echoed through the crowded mess hall at Fort Bragg. October morning light filtered through high windows, catching dust motes suspended in air thick with the smell of scrambled eggs and strong coffee. 200 service members ate their breakfast in that peculiar military rhythm, efficient, focused, eyes down. Nobody noticed the woman behind the serving line. Elena Blackwood moved with the mechanical precision of someone who'd served thousands of meals across thousands of identical mornings. 32 years old, dark brown hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, a few strands already showing premature gray from stress. Lean frame that spoke of functional fitness, not gym aesthetics. Weathered hands that gripped the serving spoon with unconscious efficiency. A face that had learned long ago not to invite attention. But if anyone had looked, really looked, they might have seen something else. The way she distributed her weight on both feet, always balanced. The micro pause before each movement, like a fighter calculating distance. The faded ink on her forearms, partially hidden by rolled sleeves. Coordinates and dates in precise military format. The tattoos only 7 years old but already wearing from deliberate neglect. Nobody looked. She was furniture. Background. A cafeteria worker in her early 30s, invisible in the way that service staff always are to those they serve. The breakfast rush built to its peak, trays sliding along rails, voices calling out orders, the controlled chaos of feeding an army base before morning formation. Elena's hands moved automatically. Eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast, eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched. The posture of someone who'd spent 7 years trying to disappear. Then Captain Garrett Thorne walked in, 29 years old, and every inch of it screaming Delta Force. 6'2", regulation haircut the color of wheat fields, jaw that looked carved from granite. He wore his uniform like armor, and his confidence like a weapon. 4 men flanked him, his team, his brothers, his pack. They approached the serving line with that particular swagger that comes from being very good at something very dangerous. Thorne's eyes landed on Elena's forearms, the faded tattoos. He smiled, not kindly. "Why so many tattoos, ma'am?" His voice carried across the mess hall. Conversations stuttered, died, heads turned. "Were you in some biker gang? Trying to look tough?" His team laughed. Lieutenant Reese Whitaker, red-haired, 27, the only woman on Thorne's team and constantly proving she belonged, covered her mouth but her eyes showed amusement. Staff Sergeant Knox Dalton, barrel-chested weapons specialist with arms like bridge cables, slapped the counter. Specialist Wyatt Fletcher, the wiry intelligence analyst, exchanged glances with Corpsman Brennan Cole, their medic. Elena didn't look up. Her hand continued its precise arc. Eggs onto plate, bacon beside them, exactly 2 strips per serving as regulation specified. "I'm talking to you." Thorne leaned forward, invading her space. "Those coordinates on your arm, what are those supposed to be? Your favorite vacation spots?" More laughter, louder now. Other tables watching, some uncomfortable, others entertained. The cruel humor of young warriors who'd never learned that scars tell stories their owners rarely share. Elena set down the serving spoon. For just a moment, one heartbeat, her posture changed. Shoulders squared. Weight shifted. Her hand hovered near the spoon with the precise grip of someone who'd been trained to turn anything into a weapon. Then she exhaled, let it go, picked up the next plate. "Eggs or oatmeal, sir?" Her voice was quiet, flat. The accent underneath it impossible to place, something worn smooth by time and distance. "I don't give a damn about the food." Thorne's smile hardened. "I want to know why you're disrespecting military service with fake warrior tattoos. See these?" He rolled up his sleeve, revealing his own ink. A Delta Force operator's trident, expertly rendered. "These mean something. These were earned with blood. Yours? They're just decoration. Probably got them at some tattoo shop trying to look cool." At a corner table, Colonel Richard Callahan looked up from his breakfast. 67 years old, gray buzz cut, face like weathered leather stretched over bone. Gulf War, 1991. Shrapnel in his left hip that made him walk with a slight hitch. 26 years of service before retirement, then brought back as base commander because good officers were always in short supply. He'd been watching the exchange with mild interest. Military culture had its hierarchies, its hazing, its tests. But something about the woman's stillness caught his attention. The way she held that serving spoon, the economy of her movements, the scar on her left cheekbone, faint but unmistakable to anyone who'd seen combat wounds. That wasn't kitchen accident scarring. Elena began cleaning the serving area. She lifted a large stock pot with one hand, had to weigh 60 pounds, maybe 70 with the leftover soup inside. Balanced it perfectly while reaching for a cloth with her other hand. The motion was so smooth, so controlled, that it took a moment to process what she'd just done. Dalton noticed first. "You work out or something? That's some serious functional strength for a..." He caught himself, but everyone heard what he'd almost said. "For a lunch lady." Elena set the pot down in the washing area. The muscles in her forearms were briefly visible beneath rolled sleeves. Not the bulky definition of a bodybuilder, but the lean, corded strength of someone who trained for function, for survival. More tattoos were visible now, dates, each one carefully inscribed in military format. October 15th, 2015. December 14th, 2016. March 22nd, 2017. Each date accompanied by small symbols, sometimes a crescent moon, sometimes what looked like mountains, sometimes stars. "Those dates supposed to mean something?" Thorne pressed, genuinely curious now despite his antagonistic tone. The tattoos were too precise, too organized to be random. Elena didn't answer. She returned to her station, eyes down, resuming the mechanical rhythm of serving. That's when the young private collapsed. He'd been 3 people back in line. 20 years old, fresh from basic training, face still soft with youth. One moment upright, the next moment on the floor, body convulsing violently. Seizure. His tray scattered across tile, food and silverware clattering in the sudden silence. The crowd froze. That terrible paralysis that grips people when crisis strikes and no one knows what to do. Elena moved. She flowed around the serving counter with a speed that seemed to defy physics. One moment behind the barrier, the next moment on her knees beside the seizing soldier, hands already working. She turned him on his side, precise angle, protecting his airway. Her fingers found the pulse point on his neck, checking rhythm while her eyes tracked the convulsions. "Someone time this," she said. Her voice had changed, not louder but carrying a different quality. The unmistakable authority of someone who'd given orders in life or death situations. "And get me something soft for under his head. Don't restrain him. Let it run its course." The mess hall watched in stunned silence as her hands moved with practiced precision. She cleared space around him, preventing injury, monitored his breathing, maintained airway protection. Every movement textbook perfect, but not the textbook most medics learn from. Base medical arrived 3 minutes later. By then, the seizure had ended. The soldier was breathing normally, coming back to consciousness. Elena had already put him in recovery position, checked for injury, and was monitoring vitals with her fingers on his pulse. "Who are you?" the medic asked, impressed by her technique. "Just someone who knows basic first aid." Elena stood, stepped back, letting them take over. Her voice had returned to that flat, quiet tone. Unremarkable, forgettable. But Corpsman Cole had noticed something. He'd been a Navy hospital corpsman before joining Army Special Operations. He'd seen combat medical training, real training, the kind that prepared you to treat sucking chest wounds under fire. "That wasn't basic first aid," he muttered to Thorne. "That was TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care." The way she positioned him, the pressure points she monitored, the calm efficiency, That's Special Operations Medical Protocol. Colonel Callahan had noticed too. He'd stood when the private collapsed, started forward, but Elena had been faster. Much faster. He watched her now as she returned to the serving line, watched how she resumed her duties as if nothing had happened. But something in his memory stirred. That medical technique, the specific positioning. He'd seen it before, years ago, in classified briefings about CIA paramilitary operations. The breakfast rush resumed, though the energy had changed. People were talking about the cafeteria worker who'd moved like lightning, who'd saved the kid with professional precision. Thorne and his team got their food and sat. The mockery had died in their throats, replaced by confused curiosity. They ate in unusual silence, glancing occasionally at Elena's station. She served the next person in line. Eggs or oatmeal. Mechanical. Invisible again. But Colonel Callahan made a call on his cell phone. Quiet. Brief. To someone he'd served with long ago. Someone who'd moved into intelligence circles where memories were classified and history was flexible. The morning stretched on. Formation at 0800. The mess hall gradually emptied. Elena cleaned her station with the same methodical precision she'd shown all morning. Wiping down surfaces, restocking containers, preparing for lunch service. At 0945, the door opened. The man who entered was 58 years old and looked like he'd been carved from old oak and tempered in fire. 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, close-cropped salt and pepper hair. He walked with a slight limp, Iraq 2007 IED that had torn through his right leg. But even with the injury, his bearing was unmistakable. Daniel Morrison, retired CIA Special Activities Division, operator turned handler, a man who'd spent 2 decades in the shadow wars that most people never knew existed. He hadn't been on this base in 3 years, hadn't had reason to visit, but Callahan's call had brought him here, and now, standing in the mess hall doorway, he understood why. His eyes found Elena behind the serving counter. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Morrison crossed the distance, his limp more pronounced with each step. His face had gone pale. His hand trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the counter. He stopped 3 feet away, stared at her face, her eyes, her hands, looked down at the faded tattoos on her forearms. When he spoke, his voice cracked, just barely, but enough to hear 7 years of grief and disbelief. Sparrow? Elena's hand froze. The serving spoon hovered in midair. Sparrow 7? The mess hall, only about 40 people remained, mostly support staff, went silent. Something in Morrison's tone demanded attention. This wasn't a joke or a game. This was something else entirely. Elena looked up, met his eyes for the first time. Hers were dark brown, intense, and they held depths that spoke of things seen that could never be unseen. "You're mistaken," she said quietly. "I'm just—" "Don't." Morrison's voice hardened with an authority that transcended rank. "Don't insult both of us. I know what I'm looking at. I know those coordinates." He pointed at her left forearm, at the first set of numbers. 33.9391 degrees north, 7,100 degrees east, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. His voice carried now, filling the space. 2015, Operation Enduring Freedom, CIA Ground Branch. You were embedded with Afghan Special Forces, the only female operator in theater, training counterterrorism units against Taliban resurgence. The remaining mess hall occupants stared. CIA, Ground Branch, Afghanistan. Words that carried weight, implied things most of them had only seen in movies. Elena's jaw tightened. "Sir, I think you have me confused with 34.5260 north, 69.1776 east." Morrison moved closer, pointing to another tattoo. "Kabul, December 2016. Intelligence indicated a major attack was being planned. 3 ground branch operators went in to extract a high-value source. 2 came out. He looked at her face, at the faint scar on her cheekbone. You came out, but you carried your teammate's body 2 miles through hostile territory to the extraction point. 24 years old, spoke fluent Pashto in Dari, could blend into Afghan society so completely that even coalition forces couldn't spot you. They called you the ghost because you could disappear, become invisible. Morrison's hand was shaking now. We called you Sparrow 7, the youngest, the best, the one who survived. Elena's composure cracked, just for a moment. Her eyes glistened. She looked down, breaking the stare. That was a long time ago, she whispered. That person doesn't exist anymore. 7 years isn't that long, Morrison said. And you don't stop being what you were. You just stop letting people see it. He pointed to the third visible tattoo. 36.7069 north, 67.1111 east. Kandahar, 2017. ISIS-K was gaining ground. Someone had to go deep cover for 3 weeks, gather intelligence on their leadership. You volunteered, alone, no backup. Morrison's voice dropped, intimate now. I was your handler for that mission. I was the one who pulled you out when you'd been compromised. You had a knife wound in your side, dehydration, hadn't slept in 4 days. You still debriefed for 6 hours before accepting medical treatment. Colonel Callahan had approached, standing at a respectful distance. His suspicions confirmed now, his military bearings somehow more pronounced in the presence of something he'd only read about in classified histories. Others were gathering. Word had spread through the base with the speed that gossip always travels in military communities. Something was happening in the mess hall. Something important. Thorne and his team had returned, drawn by rumors. They stood at the back, watching this man decode the cafeteria workers' tattoos like they were a classified document. Elena looked at Morrison, really looked at him, saw the years etched in his face, the weight of shared history in his eyes. Why are you here? She asked. Callahan called me. Describe what he saw this morning, the medical response, the way you moved. I had to see for myself. See what? If the legend was true, if Sparrow 7 really did just disappear, become nobody, after everything you did, everything you sacrificed. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder. Hidden beneath her uniform was a scar, massive, jagged, the kind that should have been fatal. Morrison saw the gesture. His eyes widened with recognition. Show them, he said quietly. No. Elena, these people need to understand. That boy, he gestured to Thorne, who bristled at being called a boy. He mocked you this morning, called your service fake. They deserve to know who they're really looking at. It doesn't matter who I was. This is who I am now. Then why keep the tattoos? Why carry the memories on your skin if you've truly left it behind? The question hung in the air. Elena had no answer. Or rather, she had one but couldn't speak it. The tattoos were penance, reminder, promise to the dead that they wouldn't be forgotten even if history had erased them. Morrison turned to address the growing crowd. Sparrow Program, CIA Special Activities Division, Ground Branch, 2013 to 2017. 8 deep cover operatives deployed to Afghanistan and Pakistan during the drawdown and ISIS-K emergence. Their mission was simple on paper: train indigenous forces, gather intelligence on emerging threats, conduct high-value target operations. In reality, they did things that will never be declassified, things that prevented attacks on American soil. He looked at Elena. Sparrow 7 was recruited at 21 years old, youngest female operator ever accepted into Ground Branch. She learned Pashto in 6 months, Dari in 8. Joined Army at 18, Ranger School at 19. Only woman in her class to graduate. CIA recruited her at 21. The crowd pressed closer. This was history coming alive. Legend made flesh. December 14th, 2016. Morrison's voice roughened. Kabul safe house. Sparrow team, 7 operators plus support staff. Someone had leaked their location. Taliban special forces raided at 0300 hours. 30 fighters against 7 CIA officers. He paused. The silence was absolute. 6 Sparrow operators died defending that safe house, buying time for one person to escape with classified intelligence that would prevent a major terrorist attack on U.S. soil. That one person fought her way through hostile territory, wounded, alone. Morrison pointed at Elena. She was 24 years old. She made it to the extraction point, delivered the intelligence, saved American lives. Then she refused to accept the CIA's medal, refused the pension, refused to sign the non-disclosure agreement that would have secured her future. You know what she said? Elena's voice was barely audible. I said I wouldn't take blood money. I wouldn't deny their sacrifice. She lost everything, Morrison continued. Benefits, medical care, official acknowledgement of service. The CIA erased her records. As far as the government was concerned, Elena Blackwood never existed. Sparrow 7 never existed. And 6 good Americans never died in Kabul in 2016. The weight of that truth settled over the crowd like snow. Thorne stepped forward. His face had gone pale. Ma'am, this morning You didn't know, Elena said. That was the point. But I should have known better than to judge, to mock what I didn't understand. Elena met his eyes. You're young, Captain. Young warriors always think strength is loud, that it announces itself, demands recognition. She pulled up her sleeve slowly, revealing more of the faded ink. Real strength is quiet. It endures insults and mockery because the mission, staying invisible, is more important than pride. Reese Whitaker pushed forward, the only woman on Thorne's team, someone who'd fought tooth and nail for her position, who'd faced doubters and critics every step of her career. You were ground branch, Whitaker said, voice thick with emotion, when women weren't even officially allowed in combat roles in most units. Elena looked at her. I was useful. That's all that mattered. Gender wasn't relevant when someone needed to blend into Afghan society, when someone needed to be underestimated. How did you survive? 6 teammates dead, fighting through hostile territory. How? Elena's eyes went distant. They didn't die instead of me. They died so I could complete the mission. Every breath I take honors that sacrifice. That's how I survived, by making their deaths mean something. Colonel Callahan cleared his throat. Ms. Blackwood, I think we should continue this conversation in my office. There are protocols, people who need to be notified. Elena shook her head. No protocols, no notifications. I'm a cafeteria worker, that's all. With all respect, Callahan said carefully, people who know about Sparrow program won't see it that way. You're resurfacing. I didn't resurface. I've been here 8 months. Nobody noticed until a retired handler walked in and recognized old tattoos. Morrison touched her arm gently. Elena, please, just come to Callahan's office. Talk. Nothing official. Just talk for old times. She looked at these 2 men, warriors who'd served in the same shadows she had, brothers in the long war that most people never knew about. Finally, she nodded. My shift ends at 1400. We'll wait. The crowd began to disperse, conversations exploding in hushed tones. Thorne's team remained, watching Elena return to her station, watching her resume that mechanical rhythm, serving, cleaning, preparing. But they saw it differently now, saw the precision as training, the quietness as discipline, the invisibility as tradecraft. At 13:55, Elena removed her serving apron, hung it carefully in the kitchen, washed her hands with the thoroughness of old habit, special operations medical protocol, removing every trace of contamination. She walked through the mess hall. Every eye followed her, some with respect, some with awe, some with the uncomfortable realization that they'd been standing next to a legend and never known it. Morrison and Callahan waited by the door. As Elena reached them, Morrison spoke quietly. "There's something you need to know. Something I couldn't say in front of everyone." "What?" His face was grave. "People are dying, Elena. Former CIA officers from the Afghanistan theater. 4 dead in the last 18 months. Same methods, same patterns as 2016. Elena stopped walking. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying whoever betrayed Sparrow team is still active, still eliminating witnesses. And now that you've been identified," he didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. "I've been invisible for 7 years. Not anymore." They reached Callahan's office. As the door closed behind them, Elena caught a glimpse of the mess hall through the window. Saw Thorne and his team still standing there, watching. Saw the mixture of respect and questions on their faces. She'd spent 7 years trying to disappear, trying to honor the dead through silence, through invisibility, through penance served in anonymity. Now, in one morning, all of that had shattered. The question was, what came next? And somewhere, in shadows Elena had thought she'd left behind 7 years ago, someone was watching. Someone who'd thought she was just another ghost from the war on terror, harmless and forgotten. Someone who now realized their mistake. The game had begun again. And this time, Elena Blackwood had everything to lose. Colonel Callahan's office smelled of old leather and gun oil, a Spartan space befitting a career soldier, metal desk, filing cabinets, one bookshelf lined with military histories and field manuals. On the wall, a single framed photograph from Desert Storm. Younger Callahan standing beside an M1 Abrams, face streaked with sand and sweat, eyes hard with the knowledge of what he'd just survived. Elena sat in the chair across from his desk. Morrison leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The afternoon sun slanted through Venetian blinds, striping the room in bands of light and shadow. Callahan opened a locked drawer, pulled out a manila folder stamped with classifications that technically didn't exist anymore. He slid it across the desk. Elena didn't touch it. "I'm not cleared for classified material. Haven't been for 7 years." "Then consider this a courtesy briefing between concerned citizens," Callahan said. His voice carried the dry humor of someone who'd spent decades navigating bureaucratic absurdity. She opened the folder. 4 faces stared back at her. Black and white photographs, the kind taken for security badges. 3 men, 1 woman. Ages ranging from late 40s to mid-50s. Beneath each photo, dates of death. Thomas Brennan, March 2022, car accident, I-95 near Richmond. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. Catherine Sullivan, July 2022, heart attack in her home, found 3 days later by neighbors. Autopsies showed traces of exotic compounds that metabolized quickly, left almost no signature. James Hartford, November 2022, suicide by gunshot. Note left behind, but handwriting analysis showed inconsistencies. Ruled suspicious but never pursued. Robert Holloway, February 2023, polonium poisoning, died in hospital after 2 weeks of agony. Source never identified. Elena's hand trembled slightly as she turned the pages. "I knew them, all of them. Not well, but we crossed paths. Afghanistan, Pakistan theater, mid-2010s. They knew about Sparrow program," Morrison said quietly. "Maybe not the details, but enough. They were support staff, analysts, case officers who provided cover and logistics. And now they're dead." "Murdered," Morrison corrected. "Made to look like accidents or natural causes, but the pattern is clear. The polonium especially, that's Russian intelligence signature, or someone trained by them." Elena closed the folder. Her face had gone carefully neutral, but her eyes told a different story. Old ghosts rising, old fears resurging. "Why now? It's been 7 years. The war's over. ISIS-K is degraded. Why start killing people now? Callahan leaned forward. That's the question. But here's what we know. Every victim had some connection to Afghanistan operations between 2013 and 2017. Every victim died using methods consistent with advanced intelligence training. And every victim died within the last 18 months, starting right after certain intelligence archives were partially declassified. Archives that mentioned what? American intelligence penetration during the withdrawal period. Assets, sources, moles. The word hung in the air like smoke. Elena looked at Morrison. You think the mole from 16 is still active? I don't think, I know. His voice carried absolute certainty. I've spent 7 years hunting this person, following financial trails, interviewing retired officers who'd talk off the record, piecing together fragments of truth from an ocean of classification. He pushed off the wall, limped to the desk, pulled out his own folder, this one battered, edges worn from years of obsessive review. Sparrow team wasn't random bad luck. That safe house raid was an intelligence failure. Someone leaked your location. Someone with access to operational details that should have been compartmentalized. Someone inside CIA. Elena's jaw tightened. We knew that. We figured it out days before the raid. That's why we were consolidating evidence, preparing to exfiltrate and report to Langley. And someone knew you knew. That's why the raid happened when it did. Not to capture you, to kill you. To eliminate everyone who could testify. Morrison opened his folder. Inside, financial records, bank statements from offshore accounts, deposits dating back to 2015, continuing through 2017. Regular amounts, precisely timed. I found these 4 years ago. Took another 2 years to trace them to their source. Payments from a shell corporation with links to foreign intelligence. Not Russian, more sophisticated. Private contractors who work for the highest bidder. He tapped the account holder's name. The receiving account was held in trust. The trust was administered by a law firm in Switzerland. The firm's records were sealed, but I had friends. People who owed me favors. It took time, but eventually, he pulled out another document, a name. Elena read it. Her face went white. No, not him. It can't be him. David Ashford, Morrison said. Your recruiter, your handler for 3 missions, my former colleague and friend. The name detonated in Elena's chest like old ordnance, buried and forgotten until something disturbed it. David Ashford, distinguished, 68 years old now, with that professorial manner that made everyone trust him. The man who'd found her in Ranger School, 19 years old and furious at a world that kept telling her she didn't belong. The man who'd seen something in her, some quality he could weaponize for America's shadow wars. I don't believe it, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't want to believe it either. Morrison's expression was pained. David recruited me into CIA in 1998. We ran operations together in Iraq, Syria. When my leg got blown off in 2007, he visited me every week during recovery. He was godfather to my daughter. Then how can you accuse him? Because evidence doesn't care about friendship. Because 7 years of following the money all leads back to him. And because, Morrison pulled out the final document, 3 weeks ago, I got this. It was a photograph, recent, taken with a telephoto lens. David Ashford, older now, white-haired but still distinguished, sitting at a cafe in Georgetown. Across from him, a man Elena didn't recognize. Eastern European features, expensive suit, the careful posture of someone trained to kill. The man with Ashford is Viktor Kozlov, former Russian GRU, now private military contractor. He specializes in wet work, assassinations. And according to surveillance, he's met with Ashford 5 times in the last 6 months. Elena stared at the photo, tried to reconcile the man who'd mentored her with the man who'd allegedly betrayed her team. Tried to find the lie in Morrison's evidence and couldn't. If this is true, why hasn't he been arrested? Why are you showing me instead of FBI? Callahan answered. Because the evidence is good enough to convince us, but not good enough to convict. The financial records are old, can be explained as legitimate intelligence operations. The meetings with Kozlov can be dismissed as consulting work. Ashford runs a private security firm now, perfectly legal to hire foreign specialists. We need confession. Or we need to catch him in the act. You want to use me as bait. We want to give you the choice, Morrison corrected. You've given enough, more than enough. No one would blame you for walking away, staying invisible. But if you're willing, Elena stood, walked to the window, looked out at Fort Bragg's sprawl, parade grounds in barracks, obstacle courses in ranges, young soldiers running formations, training for wars they couldn't yet imagine. She'd been one of them once, young and certain, believing the world divided cleanly into good and evil, believing sacrifice always meant something. Then Kabul happened. The memory rose unbidden. December 14th, 2016. 3 in the morning. She'd been asleep on a cot in a safe house when the first explosion blew in the door. RPG, probably. The flash of light, the percussion wave that knocked her from the cot. Then automatic weapons fire, shouting in Pashto, the acrid smell of cordite and burning wood. Jackson Reed, Sparrow 1, team leader, 35 years old with 2 kids back home, had grabbed her by the collar, dragged her to the back room where they kept emergency gear and escape routes. "The mole is in Langley," he'd shouted over the gunfire. "Get the proof out. That's your mission now." She tried to argue, tried to stay and fight. He'd hit her, not hard, but enough to shock her into focus. "You're the fastest, the best at evasion. Get out, make their deaths mean something." Then he'd pushed her through the window. She'd landed hard, heard the firefight intensify behind her, heard her teammates dying one by one, heard the final explosion that brought the safe house down. She'd fought her way 2 miles through hostile territory with shrapnel in her side, near hypothermia setting in, enemy patrols searching. Made it to the extraction point more dead than alive. Delivered the intelligence, and then discovered that the proof she'd carried, the evidence of CIA penetration, had been buried, classified beyond retrieval. The investigation quietly dropped because it was politically inconvenient, because the war was winding down and everyone wanted to forget. 6 good Americans dead for nothing. Elena turned from the window. "If I do this, I do it my way. No handlers, no micromanagement. I've been invisible for 7 years because I'm good at it. You want Ashford? Let me work." Morrison nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Time. Access to Ashford's current location and schedule. And backup I can trust." "Backup?" "That Delta captain, Thorne, and his team." Callahan frowned. "They're not cleared for this level of operation. They're not compromised either. Ashford doesn't know them. He won't see them as threats. And after this morning, they owe me." "That kind of debt creates loyalty." Morrison considered. "It's unorthodox. So was recruiting a 19-year-old female ranger into CIA black operations. But you did it anyway." A ghost of a smile crossed Morrison's face. "Fair point." The office door opened without warning. Elena's hand moved instinctively toward her waistband, old muscle memory, reaching for a weapon that hadn't been there in 7 years. She caught herself, forced her hand to relax. The man in the doorway was 46 years old, leaning heavily on forearm crutches. Lean frame, dark hair shot through with gray, intense eyes that had seen too much. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, button-down shirt, but his bearing screamed operator. His right leg ended mid-thigh, prosthetic visible beneath his jeans. Elena's world stopped. Morrison stood. "Elena, I think you need to sit down." She didn't sit, couldn't move, could barely breathe. The man on crutches moved into the room. His hands were scarred, knuckles thick with old breaks that had healed badly. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like gravel over broken glass. "Hello, Sparrow 7. Elena's knees gave out. She caught herself on the desk, fingers white-knuckled against wood. "Jackson?" Jackson Reed, Sparrow 1, team leader, the man she'd watched die in Kabul 7 years ago, smiled. It was a sad smile, weighted with years of things left unsaid. Surprise. The room spun. Elena sat down hard in the chair, vision tunneling. Morrison was at her side immediately, hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Breathe. In through nose, out through mouth. That's it." Her training took over. Combat breathing, the kind that prevented shock. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Repeat until heart rate normalized. When the world steadied, Jackson was still there. Still real, still impossible. "You died," she whispered. "I heard you on the radio telling me to run. I heard the building collapse. You died." "I stayed behind," Jackson corrected. "Held them off while you escaped. Set charges to destroy the intelligence. And yes, I expected to die doing it." "Then how?" "Taliban wanted prisoners. Intelligence. They pulled me from the rubble. Broken legs, shrapnel, burns, but alive. Took me to a compound outside Kabul. Held me for 4 months. His voice was flat, clinical. The tone of someone reciting facts that had happened to somebody else. Didn't break, couldn't. By that point, I didn't know enough about current operations to compromise anything, even if I'd wanted to. Eventually, there was a prisoner exchange. Spring of 2017. I came back to Langley. CIA declared me killed in action for operational security. Gave me a new identity, medical care, pension, and strongly suggested I disappear. Elena's voice broke. "I mourned you. I mourned all of you. I spent 7 years thinking I was the only one who survived. Thinking I failed you." Jackson set aside his crutches, carefully lowered himself into a chair, reached out, took her hand. His grip was strong despite everything he'd been through. "You didn't fail anyone. You completed the mission. You got out with the intelligence that could have identified the mole. The fact that Langley buried it, that's not on you. But if I'd been faster, if I'd fought better, if I'd stayed, you'd be dead too, and the proof would have died with you." His eyes were fierce. "Listen to me. 6 of us died buying you time to escape. That wasn't failure. That was the mission. You honored that sacrifice by surviving, by making it count." Elena pulled her hand back, stood, paced to the window again because she couldn't sit still with this revelation burning through her. "Why now? Why reveal yourself after 7 years?" "Because the man who destroyed our team is killing again, and because I can't stop him alone. I'm 46 years old, Elena. 1 leg, chronic pain that requires medication, PTSD that makes sleep impossible most nights. I can research, I can plan, but I can't execute, not anymore." He gestured to Morrison. "Hawk's been helping me, following the money, building the case, but we need someone operational. Someone Ashford doesn't know is active, someone who can get close." "You want me to what? Confront him? Get him to confess?" "I want you to make contact. Let him know you're back. He'll react, either try to recruit you or try to kill you. Either way, we'll have our proof." Elena turned from the window. "And if he tries to kill me?" Jackson's smile was grim. "Then we kill him first." Callahan cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, let's keep this theoretical. We're discussing citizen cooperation with an ongoing investigation, not vigilante justice." "Of course," Jackson said, in a tone that suggested otherwise. "Purely theoretical." Elena sat down again, looked at these 2 men, ghosts from her past, warriors who'd never stopped fighting even when the war supposedly ended. "Tell me the plan." For the next 2 hours, they laid it out. Ashford's current life. Retired from CIA in 2018, started a private security consulting firm that did work for defense contractors and foreign governments. Legitimate on the surface, but with connections that ran deep into shadow worlds. He lived in McLean, Virginia. Expensive house, expensive lifestyle. More expensive than a government pension and modest consulting fees should allow. "We've been watching him for 8 months, Jackson said. "He's careful. Never meets Kozlov in the same place twice. Uses encryption for communications. Dead drops for sensitive exchanges. Classic tradecraft. But he has a weakness," Morrison added. "Nostalgia. He attends CIA reunions, stays in touch with old colleagues, writes articles about Afghanistan for security journals. He wants recognition for his service, wants history to remember him." Elena understood. "So we give him what he wants. A Sparrow resurfaces. Someone who can validate his legacy. Someone he'll want to reconnect with." "Exactly. You make yourself visible. He'll hear about it. People talk, especially in intelligence circles. He'll reach out, and when he does, we record everything. Get him talking about the old days, about operations, about decisions made, people lost." Jackson leaned forward. "He'll want to explain, justify. Men like Ashford always do. They need you to understand they had good reasons, that they were the smart ones who saw what others missed." Elena thought about David Ashford, remembered his lectures during training, his conviction that intelligence work required moral flexibility, his argument that the ends justified the means. She disagreed then, thought it was academic debate, philosophical exercise. Now she wondered if he'd been preparing her, grooming her to accept what he'd already become. "When do we start?" "Tonight, if you're willing. There's someone else you should meet first." Callahan made a call. 10 minutes later, a woman entered the office. 55 years old, gray hair cut short, face lined with the kind of wrinkles that came from decades of making impossible decisions. She wore a simple pantsuit and carried herself with quiet authority. "Elena Blackwood," Callahan said. "Meet General Patricia Westfield, former CIA Deputy Director for Operations." Westfield extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes sharp with intelligence that age hadn't dimmed. "I've read your file," she said, "or what's left of it after 7 years of redactions and classification. Impressive service, unfortunate ending." "Thank you, ma'am. I'm here to make you an offer. Temporary reinstatement to contractor status. Full legal protection and benefits. This is a sanctioned operation, completely above board." Elena glanced at Jackson and Morrison. "Above board like the Sparrow program was above board?" Westfield smiled thinly. "Fair question. The answer is yes, actually. This has been approved at the highest levels. The director wants this mole identified and neutralized. Too many good officers have died. We're done pretending it's coincidence." She placed a document on the desk. "Sign this, you're back in. Medical coverage, legal protection, hazard pay. And when it's over, we'll discuss making your service record official. 7 years is a long time to be erased from history." Elena stared at the paper. Standard government contract, dense with legal language. But beneath the bureaucraties, it meant recognition. Acknowledgement that she'd served. That 6 operators hadn't died for nothing. She picked up the pen, hesitated. What about them? The 6 who died in Kabul. What about their families? Westfield's expression softened. "If we nail Ashford, if we prove he betrayed them, their deaths will be declassified, honored. Their names will go on the memorial wall at Langley. Their families will finally know the truth." Elena signed. The sun was setting when she left Callahan's office. Fort Bragg had that golden hour quality, light going amber and shadows stretching long. Soldiers were heading to mess halls for evening chow. The day's training done, the evening's relaxation beginning. Normal life. The life Elena had tried to build for herself through invisibility and penance. That life was over now. She walked across the parade ground, lost in thought, didn't notice the figure approaching until he spoke. "Ma'am?" Captain Garrett Thorne stood at attention. His team flanked him. Whitaker, Dalton, Fletcher, Cole, all of them stiff with military formality. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" Elena stopped. "I'm not military anymore, Captain. You don't need permission." Thorne relaxed slightly. "We wanted to apologize, formally. This morning was inexcusable. We disrespected your service, mocked sacrifices we couldn't understand. There's no excuse for it. I already said you're forgiven. Forgiven, but not forgotten. We owe you." He glanced at his team. They nodded. "We heard, unofficially through channels, that you might be working on something related to your past service." Elena kept her face neutral. "That's classified." "Understood, but if you need backup, operators you can trust, people who owe you a debt." He left it hanging. She studied them. Young warriors, skilled and brave, but untested in the kind of shadow war she was about to enter. They knew how to kick doors and shoot threats. But did they understand that sometimes the enemy smiled and shook your hand before putting a knife in your back? Then again, that was exactly why they might be useful. Ashford would never see them as threats. "How much do you know about modern tradecraft?" she asked. Thorne blinked at the unexpected question. "The basics. Dead drops, brush passes, counter-surveillance. We studied it in training." "Studied is different from lived. The next few days you're going to learn the difference. Report to Building 7 tomorrow at 0600. Civilian clothes. Tell no one where you're going or why." "Yes, ma'am." "And Thorne, this isn't kicking down doors in Fallujah. This is a different kind of war. No rules of engagement. No backup if things go wrong. You sure you want in?" He didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," Elena nodded. 600, don't be late." She left them standing there, disappeared into the evening crowd, felt their eyes on her back, felt the weight of their commitment. More people to protect. More people who could die if she made mistakes. Just like Kabul. Her apartment was a short drive from base. Efficiency unit in a quiet complex. The kind of place that catered to junior enlisted and civilian contractors. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, bathroom. Walls bare except for a single bookshelf and a small desk. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, froze. The smell hit her first. Cologne. Expensive. Familiar. David Ashford sat in her only chair, reading one of her books. He looked up, smiled that warm, paternal smile she remembered from 7 years ago. "Hello, Elena. It's been far too long." Her hand moved toward her waistband again. Still, no weapon. Ashford noticed, smiled wider. "Relax, I'm not here to hurt you, just to talk. Catch up with an old friend." He stood, arms open. "May I?" Elena stayed by the door. "How did you find me?" "Please, I taught you tradecraft, remember? Of course I've been keeping tabs. Not invasive surveillance, just awareness, making sure you were safe." He gestured to the room. "This is what you chose? After everything you did? Cafeteria work and an efficiency apartment?" "I chose peace. You chose penance." He moved to the bookshelf, scanning titles. Philosophy, history, military theory. "You're still studying, still preparing. For what?" "Old habits." Ashford turned. His smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "I heard about this morning, the incident in the mess hall. Hawk Morrison recognizing you. Word spreads fast in our circles." "I'm not in your circles anymore." "You never left, Elena. You just stepped back into shadows. But once you're one of us, you're always one of us." He moved closer. "That's actually why I'm here, to make you an offer. I'm not interested in, hear me out, please, as a favor to someone who cares about you." The manipulation was subtle. The appeal to relationship, to debt, to emotion. Textbook recruitment technique. And yet Elena found herself nodding. Ashford sat on her futon, gestured for her to sit. She remained standing. Some of us from the old days have formed a consulting group, private intelligence work, security assessments, counterterrorism analysis for governments and corporations. It's lucrative, it's legal, and it uses skills we spent years developing. He leaned forward. We need someone with your Afghanistan experience. Specifically, we have a contract in Kabul. Corporate security, officially. Reality is protecting high-value clients who need to operate in hostile environments. It's important work, well-compensated work. Elena's mind raced. This was the approach Jackson had predicted, but faster than expected. Ashford was moving quickly. Why me? You must have dozens of qualified operators. Because you understand the culture. You speak the language. You lived with those people. That kind of deep cover experience is rare. He paused. And because you deserve better than this. Serving food to people who don't appreciate what you've sacrificed? It's beneath you. The flattery was obvious. The appeal to pride, to wounded ego. But beneath it, Elena heard something else. Urgency. He needed her specifically. Why? I'll think about it, she said carefully. Don't think too long. We're assembling the team now. Deployment is in 2 weeks. Ashford stood, placed a business card on her desk. Call me when you decide. And Elena, it's good to see you alive. There aren't many of us left from the old days. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. I know you blame yourself for Kabul, for surviving when others didn't, but you need to understand that operation was compromised from the start. The leak wasn't your fault. Sometimes we're just pawns in larger games we can't see. Then he left. Elena stood in the silence, processed what had just happened. Ashford had come to her apartment, found her within hours of her identity becoming known, made his pitch immediately. He was desperate. And his final words, admission that the operation had been compromised, that they'd been pawns. Was it confession, guilt, or psychological manipulation designed to absolve her of survivor's guilt while recruiting her? She picked up the business card, Ashford Global Solutions, office in Georgetown, phone number, email address. Elena watched from her window as Ashford's black sedan pulled away. Noticed a second car, dark SUV with tinted windows, pull out behind him. Escort, security, or backup for something worse. She grabbed her jacket, followed on foot, keeping 3 blocks back. Used reflections in storefronts, the techniques she'd learned 7 years ago. Ashford's car turned onto M Street, heading toward Georgetown's waterfront. The SUV peeled off. Different route, flanking maneuver. Elena cut through an alley, emerging on the parallel street just as the SUV passed. Caught a glimpse of the driver. Eastern European features, professional bearing. Kozlov, had to be. She memorized the license plate, pulled out her phone, texted Morrison. Ashford has mobile security, former GRU. He's scared. The response came immediately. Good, scared people make mistakes. Elena watched both vehicles disappear into Georgetown traffic. The game was accelerating. Time to press harder. Her phone rang. Morrison. You okay? Your heart rate spiked 20 minutes ago. He'd given her a watch earlier. Looked like civilian fitness tracker, actually monitored biometrics. Ashford was here, in my apartment. Silence on the other end. Then, what did he want? To recruit me. Kabul contract, leaving in 2 weeks. That's the kill box. 3 officers accepted similar contracts in the last year. None came back alive. Elena looked at the business card. Then I guess I should accept, get close, record his confession. Elena, you don't have to. Yes, I do. 6 people died because of him. 7 years I've carried that weight. Now I have a chance to make it right. Or a chance to get yourself killed. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried. She pocketed the card. I'll call him tomorrow. Accept the offer. Meanwhile, start preparing Thorne's team. If this goes wrong, I'll need extraction. You're sure about this? Elena looked at her reflection in the darkened window. saw a 32-year-old woman who'd spent 7 years trying to disappear, saw the ghost of a 24-year-old operator who'd fought through hell carrying proof that should have mattered. I'm sure. She ended the call. Sat on the futon where Ashford had sat, felt the residual warmth of his presence. Tomorrow she'd call him. Tomorrow she'd step back into the world she'd left behind. Tomorrow she'd begin hunting the man who'd mentored her, recruited her, shaped her into a weapon. The man who'd betrayed everything she believed in. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of weakness. Pulled out a box from beneath her bed. Inside, photographs from Afghanistan. Young faces, bright smiles, her team, her family. 6 people who died so she could live. I'm coming for him, she whispered to their frozen faces. I promise, I'm going to make it right. Outside, Fort Bragg settled into evening routine. Young soldiers laughed and trained and lived their lives, unaware that in one small apartment, a young warrior was preparing for one final mission. The kind of mission that ended either in justice or death. Elena Blackwood was done hiding. The ghost was about to become very, very real. The training facility at Fort Bragg didn't officially exist. Building 7 on the maps, but everyone who needed to know called it the Puzzle Palace. A place where intelligence officers learned tradecraft and special operators learned to think like spies. At 0600 the next morning, Elena stood in a windowless room that smelled of concrete and cold fluorescent light. Captain Garrett Thorne and his team arrived exactly on time, dressed in civilian clothes as instructed. Jeans, work boots, flannel shirts. They looked like construction workers, not Delta Force operators. Good. That was the point. Sit, Elena said. They sat on folding metal chairs arranged in a semicircle. She paced in front of them, hands clasped behind her back. Old instructor habits returning like muscle memory. You know how to shoot. You know how to fight. You know how to kick doors and clear rooms. For the next 72 hours, forget all of that. What I'm going to teach you is how to be invisible. How to follow someone without them knowing. How to communicate without speaking. How to kill with a smile. Reese Whitaker leaned forward. This is CIA tradecraft? This is survival. The kind that keeps you breathing when the enemy is sitting across from you at dinner, making small talk while deciding how to dispose of your body. Elena moved to a whiteboard, drew a simple diagram, a cafe, 2 figures sitting across from each other. Tomorrow night, I'm meeting David Ashford, former CIA, current suspect in the murder of my entire team and 4 support personnel. He wants to recruit me for a contract in Kabul. In reality, he wants to kill me before I can testify about what happened in 2016. Knox Dalton's jaw tightened. And you're going alone? I'm going wired. You're going as surveillance. He won't see you because you'll be part of the environment. Background, furniture, the couple having dinner 3 tables over, the businessman reading a newspaper at the bar. She tapped the diagram. Ashford is 68 years old, but he's been doing this since before you were born. He'll scan for surveillance. He'll look for patterns, for tells, for anything out of place. One mistake and he disappears. We get one shot at this. For the next 12 hours, Elena drilled them relentlessly. Dead drops. How to leave a message in a public place. Under a park bench, behind a loose brick, inside a hollowed-out book in a library, and retrieve it without breaking stride. How to signal completion with a piece of chalk on a lamppost, a newspaper folded a certain way. Brush passes. Walking past someone in a crowd, making contact for a fraction of a second, exchanging items without breaking rhythm. Documents, keys, weapons. The handoff so smooth that cameras reviewing the footage wouldn't catch it. Counter surveillance. How to spot a tail. How to use reflections in windows. How to double back through department stores. How to employ sudden stops and direction changes to flush out followers. But more importantly, how to appear completely unaware while cataloging every person within visual range. Wyatt Fletcher struggled with it. I keep wanting to look directly at potential threats. That's combat instinct, Elena said. In a firefight, you identify and engage. But this is different. Direct eye contact alerts them. You see without looking. Peripheral vision becomes your primary sense. She demonstrated. Walked through the room with eyes forward, relaxed posture, seemingly oblivious. Then recited every detail. Thorne shifting his weight to his left leg, Dalton's hand near his concealed sidearm, Cole watching the door, Whitaker's micro-expression of frustration. "You're reading body language," Whitaker said. "I'm reading everything. Posture, breathing, micro-expressions, hand positions, weight distribution. In Afghanistan, I survived by knowing when the village elder was lying, when the fighter was planning to betray us, when the patrol was seconds from spotting me. You learn to read people, or you die." By hour 6, they were exhausted. Elena was relentless. "Again, Fletcher, you're the target. Everyone else, tail him through the scenario. He needs to spot all of you without appearing to look." Fletcher walked through a mock city street, actually a training area with fake storefronts and mannequin crowds. The team followed at staggered intervals. Professional, careful. Fletcher spotted 3 of them, missed Whitaker entirely. "Dead," Elena said. "Whitaker just put a bullet in your spine because you didn't see her cross from the opposite sidewalk using the crowd as cover." Fletcher swore under his breath. "Run it again." They ran it 17 more times. By the end, Fletcher could track all 4 team members while appearing to window shop. At 1800 hours, Elena called a break. Brought in food from the mess hall, not the serving line she'd worked behind, but a delivery arranged by Callahan. She wasn't ready to face that space again as herself, rather than her invisible persona. They ate in silence for a while, exhaustion settling into bones, minds still processing the overwhelming input of skills learned too fast. Thorne finally spoke. "This is how you survived? For years in hostile territory?" "This and luck. Mostly luck." Elena set down her coffee. "In 2015, I lived in a village in Helmand province for 3 months. Dressed like an Afghan woman. Learned to cook their food, speak their dialect, think like them. Taliban patrols came through twice. Walked right past me both times." "How?" Whitaker asked. "You're American, Caucasian. How did you pass?" "By believing my own cover. By becoming the person I pretended to be. You can't fake authenticity at that level. You have to live it completely." Elena's eyes went distant. "I had a cover identity, widow of a fighter killed by Americans. Moved to the village to live with my husband's family. I mourned him, wore black, kept my eyes down, became invisible through grief." The room was quiet. "The hardest part wasn't the danger, it was coming back, remembering who I really was. After 3 months of being someone else, becoming Elena Blackwood again took effort." Brennan Cole, the medic, leaned forward. "Is that why you worked cafeteria? To have a simple identity you didn't have to think about?" Elena nodded slowly. "Partly. Also penance, service, staying useful without being noticed. But yes, after years of being whoever the mission required, it was restful to just be nobody." "You were never nobody," Thorne said quietly. "I was a ghost. Same thing." At 2200 hours, Jackson Reed arrived, navigating his crutches through the doorframe with practiced ease. Behind him, Morrison limped in. 2 warriors, battered but unbroken. Jackson surveyed the team. "How are they?" "Raw but learning fast. They'll do." Elena turned to Thorne's team. "These are the men I told you about. Jackson Reed, former Sparrow 1. Daniel Morrison, former CIA handler. They've been hunting David Ashford for 7 years." Morrison settled into a chair with a grunt. 7 years, and we're finally close. Because of you." He looked at the Delta team. "What she's teaching you isn't academic. Tomorrow night, if things go wrong, you'll be all that stands between Elena and a bullet." "We understand, sir," Thorne said. "Do you?" Jackson leaned forward on his crutches. "Ashford has killed 10 people that we know of. Probably more. He's patient, cautious, and completely ruthless. He'll have backup, escape routes, contingencies we haven't anticipated. If Elena's cover is blown, if he suspects surveillance, he'll kill her and disappear. We'll never find him again. Then we don't get blown, Whitaker said. Jackson smiled grimly. Confidence is good. Overconfidence gets people killed. Remember which is which. Morrison pulled out a tablet, brought up surveillance photos of David Ashford. Recent ones, showing a distinguished man in expensive suits. White hair, patrician features, the kind of face you'd trust with your secrets. This is the enemy. Memorize him. Not just his face, his walk, his posture, his mannerisms. Tomorrow night you'll be in the same restaurant. You need to track him without staring. For the next hour, they studied Ashford. His patterns of movement, the way he favored his right side slightly, old injury maybe. How his eyes always swept a room when he entered, cataloging exits and threats. The unconscious tells of a man who'd spent a lifetime in dangerous places. He's trained, Dalton observed, moves like an operator. He was, Morrison said, Army Special Forces in the 1970s, then CIA Special Activities. He ran operations in Central America, Middle East, Afghanistan. Recruited and handled some of the best officers in the business, including Elena. All eyes turned to her. He found me in Ranger School, Elena said. 19 years old, angry at the world, trying to prove I belonged. He saw potential. Or maybe he saw someone he could shape. Either way, he recruited me 2 years later. What was he like? Fletcher asked. As a mentor? Brilliant, patient. He taught me to think 3 moves ahead, to see the larger game, to understand that intelligence work was about patience in planning, not heroics. Her voice hardened. He also taught me that the ends justified the means, that sometimes good people had to do bad things for the greater good. I thought it was theoretical. Turns out he'd already been practicing. Jackson pulled up financial records. These are the accounts we traced. Payments from foreign sources, 2015 to 2017. Total of $400,000. Blood money for betraying American operators. Thorne whistled. He sold us out for money? Maybe, or maybe he convinced himself he was playing both sides, feeding intelligence to make himself look valuable while protecting American interests. Classic double-agent rationalization. Morrison's voice dripped contempt. Either way, our entire team was destroyed because of his actions. The weight of that settled over the room. Elena broke the silence. Tomorrow night, 1900 hours, restaurant in Georgetown called The Hamilton. Upscale, busy, lots of ambient noise. Good place for a private conversation in public. She looked at each team member. Thorne and Whitaker, you're a couple. Anniversary dinner. Dress nice, act natural, be too wrapped up in each other to notice anyone else. Dalton, your business traveler. Laptop, bourbon, bored expression. Fletcher and Cole, your old college friends catching up. Loud, enthusiastic, harmless. And you? Whitaker asked. I'm bait. Elena's smile was cold. I'm going to give Ashford exactly what he wants. Access to Sparrow 7. A chance to explain himself. A chance to justify 7 years of murder. And while he's talking, I'm going to get him to confess. Jackson held up a small device. Looked like a luxury pen. Latest tech. Records audio and video with perfect clarity. Completely passive. No RF signature for him to detect. Clip it to your jacket, angle it toward him, and let him talk. Elena took the pen, turned it over in her hands, felt the weight of what it represented. Evidence, justice, closure, or death. What if he doesn't confess? Cole asked. What if he just recruits you and plays it straight? Then I accept the contract. Go to Kabul with him. Get close enough that he can't help but reveal himself. Elena's voice was flat. Whatever it takes. Morrison stood. If that happens, we extract you. No arguments. You're not dying in Kabul like your team did. I died in Kabul in 2016, Elena said quietly. What's walking around now is just unfinished business. The room went silent. Finally, Thorne stood. Then let's finish it. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. Elena reviewed the restaurant layout, memorized exits, sightlines, potential threats. Morrison provided updated intelligence on Ashford's known associates, any of whom might provide security. At 1700 hours, she showered and dressed. Not cafeteria worker clothes, but something from her past. Black jeans, dark gray blouse, leather jacket that concealed the slight bulk of a concealed holster. She hadn't carried a weapon in 7 years. Now seemed like a good time to start again. The Glock 19 felt like an old friend returning, 15 rounds of 9mm. She'd qualified expert with this weapon in 2015. Muscle memory guided her hands through the press check, the chamber verification, the holster draw. Still fast, still smooth. Jackson had provided the weapon, along with something else, a photograph. Sparrow Team, 2015. 7 young operators, confident and alive. Elena stood second from left, fierce determination in her eyes. "Keep this," Jackson had said. "Remember what we're fighting for." She tucked it in her jacket, over her heart. At 1830, she drove to Georgetown. The Hamilton occupied a converted townhouse, brick and ivy, warm light spilling from tall windows. Expensive cars lined the street. Well-dressed couples entered and exited. The kind of place where power brokers made deals and politicians solidified alliances. Elena parked 3 blocks away, walked through evening crowds, scanning automatically for surveillance. Saw Thorne and Whitaker entering the restaurant ahead of her, his hand on her back, her laugh carrying across the street. Perfect cover. She entered at exactly 1900 hours. The maitre d' approached with practiced smoothness. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Meeting someone. Ashford party." Recognition flickered. "Of course, right this way." David Ashford sat at a corner table, strategic position, back to wall, clear view of entrance and exits. No one could approach without him seeing. He stood as Elena approached, smile warm and genuine. "Elena, thank you for coming." He embraced her. The hug felt paternal, safe. She wanted to break his neck. Instead, she smiled. "Thank you for the invitation." They sat. A waiter materialized, took drink orders. Ashford ordered scotch, expensive single malt. Elena ordered water, needed to stay sharp. "I'm glad you reconsidered," Ashford said. "Your skills are wasted serving cafeteria food." "I needed time to think, to decide if I was ready to step back into that world." "And your conclusion?" Elena met his eyes. "That maybe you're right. Maybe penance doesn't honor the dead. Maybe using my skills to help people does." Ashford's smile widened. "I knew you'd see reason. You were always the smartest of my recruits." The pen recorder in her jacket captured every word, every inflection. They made small talk through appetizers, discussed the restaurant, the weather, neutral topics. Ashford was feeling her out, establishing rapport before business. Finally, over the main course, he leaned forward. "The Kabul contract. It's more sensitive than I initially indicated. Corporate security is the cover. Reality is we're protecting high-value clients who need to operate in extremely hostile environments. Former intelligence officers, journalists, NGO workers, people doing important work." Sounds dangerous. It is, but it's also well compensated. 6 months, $500,000, tax-free, paid to an offshore account. Elena pretended to consider. "That's generous. You're worth it. And honestly, Elena, there's another reason I want you specifically." His voice dropped. "Closure. For both of us. What happened in Kabul in 16, that's haunted me for 7 years. I failed your team, failed to protect you. This is a chance to make amends." The audacity of it stole her breath. He was positioning himself as victim, as someone seeking redemption. "You think a contract erases 6 deaths?" No, nothing erases that. But maybe saving lives now honors their sacrifice, makes their deaths mean something. Elena's hand tightened on her fork. The recorder was getting this. Every manipulative word. Tell me what happened. Really happened. The official story never made sense. How did Taliban find the safe house? Ashford's expression shifted, became carefully neutral. Intelligence failure. Someone talked. We never identified the leak. But you had suspicions. Everyone had suspicions. That's what betrayal does. Makes you doubt everyone. Elena leaned forward. I spent 7 years believing I failed. That I should have been faster, smarter, better. That somehow I was responsible for 6 deaths. Tell me the truth, David. As my mentor, as someone who supposedly cares, tell me it wasn't my fault. The appeal to ego, to his role as mentor. Jackson had coached her on this. Give him a chance to demonstrate superior knowledge, to absolve her guilt while positioning himself as the wise authority. Ashford reached across the table, took her hand. The gesture looked compassionate, fatherly. Elena, listen to me carefully. What happened in Kabul was not your fault. The operation was compromised from the beginning. Your team was investigating intelligence leaks, getting too close to something big. Someone had to stop you. Her heart hammered. Someone? Who? I don't know for certain, but I have theories. He glanced around, ensuring privacy. There were people in Langley who opposed continuing operations in Afghanistan, who thought the war was lost, that we were just getting more Americans killed for nothing, who wanted to accelerate the withdrawal. By murdering American officers? By eliminating those who'd uncovered evidence of... He stopped, reconsidered his words. This isn't the place for this discussion. Then where? When? I've waited 7 years. I deserve answers. Ashford studied her. Elena could see the calculation in his eyes, deciding how much to reveal, how much she could be trusted. Finally, accept the Kabul contract. Come work with me. I'll tell you everything. The full story, names, proof, but not here, not now. This is too sensitive. I need something, anything, please. The word tasted like ash, but it worked. Ashford leaned closer. The leak was deliberate. Someone in CIA was feeding intelligence to our enemies. Not for money, for ideology. They believed the war was unwinnable, that we were backing corrupt Afghan forces, that American lives were being wasted. They wanted to force a faster withdrawal. That's treason. That's perspective. One person's treason is another's conscience. His voice carried strange intensity. History proved them right, didn't it? We left Afghanistan in chaos in 2021. Taliban took over in weeks. Maybe the person who tried to end it sooner was the only one seeing clearly. Ice flooded Elena's veins. He wasn't hypothesizing. He was confessing. You knew, she whispered. You knew the operation was compromised. You knew my team was in danger. I knew something was wrong, yes. I tried to warn Jackson, tried to pull you all out early. But he was stubborn, wanted to identify the source before aborting. Lies. All lies. Jackson had never mentioned warnings, had never suggested Ashford tried to protect them. But Elena needed more, needed explicit admission. If you knew, why didn't you stop it? Why let 6 people die? Ashford's face showed what looked like genuine anguish. Because I couldn't prove anything, couldn't pinpoint the leak. By the time I realized how deep it went, it was too late. The raid happened. Your team died. And I've carried that guilt every day since. Not confession, still deflecting, still maintaining deniability. Elena tried another approach. The people dying now, former officers from that era, is it connected? Ashford's eyes narrowed. What people? 4 dead in 18 months. Same methods as professional hits. Thomas Brennan, Catherine Sullivan, James Hartford, Robert Holloway, all connected to Afghanistan operations. I hadn't heard, but his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his scotch. You're sure they were murdered? Polonium poisoning tends to rule out natural causes. Ashford drank, set down the glass carefully. If what you're saying is true, someone is eliminating witnesses. People who knew too much about those operations. People like me. People like both of us. He met her eyes. Elena, if there's an active threat targeting veterans from that era, we need to be careful. Very careful. Which is why I want you where I can protect you. Kabul might actually be safer than staying here. The inversion was masterful. Turn the threat around. Make himself protector instead of predator. Elena played along. You really think I'm in danger? I think you're the last living Sparrow operator. If someone's cleaning house, you're on the list. Except Jackson Reed, he survived. Ashford went very still. Jackson died in Kabul, killed in the raid. That's what the records say, but records can be wrong. Elena, what are you suggesting? She'd pushed too far. Seen it in his eyes, the shift from paternal concern to predatory calculation. Time to retreat. Nothing, just wishful thinking, wanting to believe someone else survived. She smiled weakly. 7 years is a long time to be alone with ghosts. Ashford relaxed slightly. I understand. Believe me. Some nights I still hear their voices, still wonder if I could have done more. The waiter arrived with dessert menus. Ashford waved him off. Just the check, please. He looked at Elena. Think about the Kabul offer. Take a day or two, but decide soon. Window of opportunity won't stay open forever. I will. Thank you for dinner and for being honest about the past. They stood. Ashford embraced her again, whispered in her ear, Be careful, Elena. Trust no one, not even old friends. Was it warning or threat? She left the restaurant at 20:45, walked 3 blocks to her car, scanning constantly for surveillance, saw nothing overt, but felt eyes on her back. Her phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. Clean exit. We got everything. Meet at the safe house. The safe house was actually Morrison's home, a ranch outside Fort Bragg, isolated and secure. Elena drove there directly, checking mirrors constantly for tails. The team was already assembled when she arrived. Thorne and Whitaker still in their dinner clothes, Dalton, Fletcher, and Cole in civilian gear. Jackson and Morrison waiting in the living room. How'd I do? Elena asked. Morrison replayed the recording, crystal clear audio. Every word Ashford had said. They listened in silence. When it finished, Morrison swore. He admits the operation was compromised, admits knowing about danger, but never explicitly confesses to being the leak. It's enough for reasonable suspicion, Jackson said, but not enough for prosecution. Good lawyer would argue he was describing someone else's actions. Then we need more, Elena said. I accept his offer. Go to Kabul. Get him somewhere he feels safe enough to tell the truth. Absolutely not, Thorne said. That's suicide. We have no jurisdiction in Kabul, no backup, no extraction capability. He's right, Jackson agreed. We need another approach. Elena paced, thought through options. Finally, what if he thinks I'm already dead? Everyone stared. Explain, Morrison said. Stage my death. Car accident, maybe. Convincing enough that Ashford believes it. Then watch how he reacts. If he's the mole, if he ordered my death, he'll need to confirm it. He'll check. And when he does, we'll be ready. Jackson considered. Risky. If it fails, if he suspects deception, we lose our advantage. If we don't push, he'll disappear. He's already nervous, asking about the murders, about Jackson being alive. He knows something's wrong. We need to force his hand. Whitaker spoke up. There's another option. Tell him you're in for the Kabul contract. Then we follow him. Eventually, he'll meet with his handler, his co-conspirators. He'll reveal himself. That requires massive surveillance, Morrison said. Resources we don't have. Or we create a situation where he has to act, Dalton suggested. Something that threatens his cover so badly he can't help but respond. Elena held up her hand. What if we do both? I accept the contract, agree to go to Kabul, but before deployment we leak information that Jackson Reed is alive. Make him think his 7-year cover is about to collapse. He'll have to act. Jackson leaned forward. And when he does, we're watching, recording, catching him in the act. It's still dangerous, Thorne said. He might come after you directly. Then you'll be there to stop him. Elena looked at each team member. This is what you signed up for. Protection detail on someone being used as bait. Can you handle it? Thorne stood. Yes, ma'am. One by one, his team echoed the affirmation. Morrison pulled out a bottle of whiskey, poured glasses. Then let's plan an ambush. They worked through the night, refining the strategy, identifying weaknesses, preparing contingencies. At 0300, Elena stepped outside. Needed air, needed to think. The Virginia countryside was dark and quiet. Stars overhead, cool breeze carrying the scent of pine, peaceful. She heard the crutches behind her. Jackson made his way onto the porch. Couldn't sleep either? Haven't slept properly since 2016, Elena said. You? Same. He settled onto a bench, set his crutches aside. They stared at the darkness in companionable silence. Finally, Jackson spoke. I need to apologize. For what? For pushing you through that window. For ordering you to run while we died. For putting all that weight on your shoulders. His voice cracked. You were 24 years old, Elena. You shouldn't have carried that burden alone. You saved my life. And destroyed it. You spent 7 years in penance for surviving. That's on me. Elena turned to face him. You gave me purpose. A mission. Getting that intelligence out mattered. It prevented other operations from being compromised. Saved lives. Did it? Or did Langley bury it like they bury everything inconvenient? I choose to believe it mattered. Otherwise, what's the point? Jackson reached out. She took his hand. 2 operators scarred by the same battle. When this is over, he said, when we've gotten justice, what then? What do you want? Elena didn't have an answer. She'd spent so long focused on atonement that she'd never considered what came after. I don't know, maybe just peace. Real peace. Not hiding, not running, just being. You've earned that, more than earned it. So have you. They sat in silence as dawn approached. 2 ghosts waiting for one final mission. One final chance to make the past matter. Inside, the team was still planning, still preparing. Outside, Elena Blackwood watched the sun rise over Virginia countryside and wondered if she'd live to see it set. The next 48 hours moved with calculated precision. Elena called Ashford, accepted the Kabul contract. He sounded pleased, relieved even. They arranged to meet at his office in 3 days to sign paperwork and discuss operational details. Meanwhile, Jackson activated his network. Retired CIA officers who still talk to each other, who still swap stories. He seeded rumors carefully. Sparrow 1 might be alive, living under assumed name, preparing to testify about Afghanistan operations. The rumors spread through intelligence communities. Old-timers talked, current officers listened. And somewhere in that network, David Ashford heard. He called Elena that night, voice tight with stress. We need to move up our timeline. Deploy to Kabul within 48 hours instead of waiting 2 weeks. Why the rush? Security situation. Our clients are exposed. We need to move now or we lose the contract. Lies. He was panicking. The rumors about Jackson had worked. I can be ready, Elena said. Good. I'll have everything arranged. Meet me at my office tomorrow, noon. We'll finalize details and deploy the following day. He hung up before she could respond. Elena immediately called Jackson. He's running, trying to get me out of the country before the net closes. Then we spring the trap tomorrow, at his office. Can you get him there? Already done. Noon, tomorrow. The next morning, Elena drove to Georgetown. Ashford's office occupied the third floor of a converted townhouse near the university. Ashford Global Solutions. Legitimate consulting firm doing legitimate work, except for the murder. Thorne's team was already in position. Dalton across the street in a coffee shop, laptop open, surveillance equipment disguised as routine business. Fletcher in a car down the block, monitoring communications. Colin Whitaker on foot, ready to move if things went wrong. Jackson and Morrison were in a van 2 blocks away, coordinating. Elena wore the recording pen again, but this time also a tracking device in her jacket lining, and a concealed panic button that would bring the team running. She entered the building at 11:55, climbed stairs to the third floor. Ashford's office was at the end of the hall. The door was open. He stood by the window, looking out at Georgetown streets. "Elena, come in. Close the door, please." She did. Immediately felt wrong. The office was too quiet, too empty. Where was the administrative staff? The other consultants? Ashford turned, smiled, but his eyes were cold. "I'm glad you came. Saves me the trouble of finding you." Elena's hand moved toward her jacket. Ashford moved faster, produced a pistol from his desk drawer. Small caliber, suppressed. Probably wouldn't kill immediately, but would incapacitate. "Don't. Hands where I can see them." She raised her hands slowly, mind racing through options. He was 15 feet away, professional distance. He'd shoot before she could close. "David, what is this?" "This is the end of a very long game. 7 years I've managed to stay ahead, stay invisible. And now you and Jackson Reed threaten everything." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please, don't insult me. Jackson is alive. You've been working together, building a case, trying to expose what happened in 16. He gestured with the pistol. "Turn around, face the wall, hands on your head." Elena complied, felt him approach from behind, felt his hand pat her down, professional and thorough. Found the recording pen immediately. "Really? This is beneath you." He tossed it aside, continued searching, found the panic button, disabled it, found the tracking device, crushed it under his heel. "Now then, we're going to walk out of here together. You're going to smile and act natural. We're going to my car. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about who you've told and what evidence exists. And then you'll kill me. Eventually. But first, I need to understand the scope of compromise. Who knows what, where the evidence is. Then yes, you'll die. Just like Jackson will die. Just like anyone else who threatens to expose the truth." Elena's mind raced. The panic button was destroyed. The team wouldn't know she was in danger until she failed to exit on schedule. By then, Ashford would have her somewhere isolated. She had to stall, create opportunity. "Why?" she asked. "Why betray us? We trusted you." "Because you were pawns in a game you didn't understand. We were fighting an unwinnable war, Elena. Getting Americans killed for corrupt Afghan politicians and warlords. I tried to stop it, tried to make Langley see reason. When they wouldn't listen, I took matters into my own hands. By feeding intelligence to Taliban? By trying to accelerate the inevitable. Force a withdrawal before more Americans died. I was right, wasn't I? Look at 2021. We left in chaos anyway. Tens of thousands of Americans and Afghans abandoned. Maybe if we'd left sooner, on better terms, it would have been different. By murdering 6 American operators? By making hard choices for the greater good. Your team discovered my communications. They had to be stopped." His voice was calm, rational, convinced of his own righteousness. "I regret their deaths, but I don't regret the necessity." Elena turned slowly, faced him. The gun was steady in his hand. "And the others? Brennan, Sullivan, Hartford, Holloway? They had to die too?" "They were loose ends. When certain archives were declassified, they started asking questions, putting pieces together. I couldn't risk exposure. So you killed them." "I protected myself. Just like I'm protecting myself now. He gestured toward the door. Move. Elena walked. Out of the office, down the hall. Ashford stayed 3 feet behind, gun concealed under his jacket, but visible enough to control her. They reached the stairs, started descending. Second floor, first floor. The lobby was empty. He'd cleared it somehow. Paid off the security guard maybe, or killed him. They walked toward the rear exit. Ashford's car would be there. Once inside, she was dead. Elena's hand brushed the stair railing. Metal, cold, heavy. She made her decision. Spun, grabbed the railing, swung her body around in a move learned 7 years ago. Her foot connected with Ashford's wrist. The gun went flying. He was fast, 68 but trained. Came at her with knife from his belt. Close quarters blade work. Elena ducked. His knife whistled past her head. She drove her palm into his solar plexus. He grunted, staggered. They fought in the narrow lobby. Silent, brutal. Young operator versus old spy using skills honed over decades. Ashford slashed, opened a cut across Elena's forearm. She ignored the pain, kicked his knee. He went down. She moved for the gun. He grabbed her ankle, pulled. She fell. They grappled on the floor. His hands found her throat. Squeezed. Elena's vision tunneled. She drove her thumbs into pressure points under his jaw. He screamed, released. She rolled away, gasping, blood running from her arm. Ashford reached the gun first, turned, aimed. The office door exploded inward. Thorne burst through, weapon drawn. Behind him, Dalton and Fletcher, moving with Delta Force precision. "Drop it!" Thorne shouted. Ashford hesitated. Calculated odds. 3 operators with guns versus his single pistol. He dropped the weapon. "Clear!" Dalton secured Ashford. Fletcher checked Elena. "You're hit." "Just a scratch." Elena stood. Looked at Ashford on the ground, hands zip-tied behind his back. Morrison limped in, followed by Jackson on his crutches. The 2 men who'd spent 7 years hunting this ghost. Jackson looked down at his former colleague. "Hello, David." Ashford looked up, saw the man he thought was dead, saw judgment in those eyes. "Jackson, you thought I died in Kabul. I almost did. But I survived, spent 7 years hunting you, and now here we are." FBI agents arrived 10 minutes later. General Westfield had been monitoring remotely, had federal warrants ready the moment Ashford drew his weapon. They arrested him on attempted murder, assault, weapons charges. Simultaneously, a second FBI team moved on Victor Kozlov at his Georgetown apartment. The former GRU operative was taken into custody without incident. Forensic accounting had already traced 4 contracted killings: Brennan, Sullivan, Hartford, Holloway, directly to wire transfers from Ashford's offshore accounts. Kozlov would cooperate, trading testimony for a reduced sentence. Another thread cut. The other charges against Ashford, treason, espionage, conspiracy to murder 6 Sparrow operators and 4 support personnel, would come later. After forensic accountants traced every dollar, after cryptographers decoded his communications, after the full weight of evidence buried him. But Elena's recording pen, recovered from his office, had captured his confession. Every word, every justification, every admission. It was over. Paramedics treated Elena's arm. Butterfly stitches, antibiotics, nothing serious. She'd have another scar to add to her collection. As they loaded Ashford into a federal vehicle, he caught Elena's eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I truly am. I never wanted you hurt." "You killed my family," Elena replied. "You don't get to be sorry." They drove him away. The aftermath took weeks. Depositions, debriefings, testimony. Elena spent hours recounting every detail of the Kabul operation, every suspicion about the mole, every moment of that final firefight. 6 weeks later, she stood at CIA headquarters. The memorial wall, black marble engraved with stars, each star representing an officer killed in the line of duty. 6 new stars had been added. Beside them, names that had been classified for 7 years. Jackson Reed, status corrected, KIA to POW/returned. Catherine Sullivan, James Hartford, Robert Holloway, Thomas Patterson, Samuel Whitfield. Elena touched each name, whispered words only the dead could hear. I kept my promise. He's going to pay. You're remembered. You mattered. A hand touched her shoulder. Jackson, standing now with prosthetic leg and single crutch, had come to pay respects. Together they stood. 2 sparrows, last of their kind. What now? Jackson asked. Elena thought about the questions she'd been avoiding. What came after justice? After the mission was complete? I've been offered a position, she said, teaching at the farm, training next generation of ground branch operators. Will you take it? I think so. Someone needs to teach them that strength isn't loud, that real warriors don't advertise, that sometimes the most important battles are fought in shadows by people who'll never be recognized. Sounds perfect for you. What about you? Jackson smiled. Westfield offered me consulting work, reviewing historical operations, making sure we learn from past mistakes. He paused. And there's someone I need to find, someone I lost touch with during captivity. If I can locate her, maybe I'll finally have that life I thought was impossible. I hope you find her. They stood in silence. Then Elena pulled out the photograph. Sparrow Team, 2015. 7 young faces, full of hope and purpose. She placed it at the base of the memorial. For them, she said, so they're not just stars, so they're remembered as people. 1 month later, Elena stood in front of 25 new recruits at Camp Peary. Young operators, eager and confident, ready to become ghosts. My name is Elena Blackwood, she began. For 7 years I didn't exist. I was nobody, invisible. And that invisibility saved more lives than you'll ever know. She walked among them, saw their skepticism, their doubt. Young woman, 32 years old, civilian clothes, no visible weapons or authority. Some of you are already judging me, wondering what I could possibly teach you. That's good. That's natural. Remember that feeling. She stopped, turned. Because 7 years ago, someone judged me too. Told me I didn't belong. Told me women couldn't be operators, couldn't survive what this job demands. She pulled back her sleeve, showed them the scars, the faded tattoos. I proved them wrong by being better, by being invisible, by being essential. She had their attention now. For the next 6 months, I'm going to teach you things that aren't in any manual. How to disappear. How to become someone else so completely that you forget who you were. How to survive when everything goes wrong and you're alone in hostile territory with nothing but training and will. Elena looked at each face, saw potential, saw futures. Some of you won't make it through training. Some will wash out. That's fine. This life isn't for everyone. But those who do make it, those who become true ghosts, you'll be part of something larger than yourselves. You'll protect people who'll never know you exist. You'll fight battles that will never be acknowledged. And if you're very lucky, you'll live long enough to tell someone your story. She smiled, a real smile this time. Welcome to the shadows. Let's begin. 6 months later, the first class graduated. 18 new ground branch operators, ready to disappear into the world's dark corners. Elena watched them receive their assignments, felt pride, purpose. That night she sat on her porch. Real porch now, not efficiency apartment. Small house outside Williamsburg. Place she could call home. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jackson. Found her. Getting married next month. You're invited. Elena smiled, typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Another text from Thorne. Ma'am, thank you for everything. My team and I are being reassigned to protective detail for Sparrow graduates. Guess we're in the ghost business now. She replied, take care of them. They're family now. One final text from General Westfield. Congressional hearing went well. Ashford will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Justice served. Well done, Sparrow 7. Elena set down her phone, looked up at stars. Somewhere out there, her students were beginning their first missions, becoming invisible, becoming essential, carrying forward a legacy that started in Afghan mountains and ended with a young woman serving cafeteria food. Full circle. She raised a glass of whiskey. Toast to absent friends. To 6 operators who died so she could complete the mission. To 7 years of penance that finally meant something. This is for you, she whispered to the night. All of it, every moment. You're not forgotten. You never were. The stars didn't answer, but Elena didn't need them to. She'd kept her promise, made their sacrifice matter, given them the recognition they'd earned. Now, finally, she could rest. Not disappear, not hide, not serve penance, just live. Elena Blackwood, Sparrow 7. The silent guardian who'd protected America from shadows for 7 years. The ghost who became real. The warrior who proved that strength doesn't announce itself, it endures. And in the shadows where sparrows once flew, a new generation was learning to disappear. Learning that the greatest warriors are the ones you never see coming, the ones who serve in silence, the ones who endure.